So this one's my mother's favorite. I talk to her every day. My mom has all the receipts in my career. This is the story of the napper, and it is a true story of a boss who slept in his. You can't even say it without laughing, right?
The Posted Careers podcast. Discussions at the intersection of careers and the future of work. Hosted by Jeffrey Colon.
Mita, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the book. I have this question, and that is what made you want to write this book, and why did you note that you yourself were a bad boss in the book? Most
Yeah.
people wouldn't do that.
So I've been the person who's contributed to a lot of literature in the workplace on how to survive a toxic workplace, how to survive a toxic boss. It's the number one DM I get, Jeff. Like, people will write really personal things to me about things happening in their workplace, people I don't know. And they're like, what do I do? My boss is acting this way. And you're like, wow, this is really heartbreaking. But I want to rewind to the genesis of the book, which is my mother's home was a few years ago almost destroyed in a bad flood, and it's been rebuilt since. But when anyone's in a home that's been affected by fire, water, it's very traumatic. So I'm in my childhood bedroom trying to save a slew of random things, report cards from the first grade, book reports from when I was in the fifth grade. You're like, what is all these things we hold on to? But I ended up finding a notebook in my 20s. And if anyone meets me today and you ask me, like, what's your favorite tool? Yeah, I have a lot of tech tools, but I love a good notebook. I love a journal. And I find a journal from my 20s, and I had written down nicknames I had for bosses in this moment of my time, and vignettes and lists of things they did and said. Like, it was like, wow. And I had just recently then watched again Mean Girls, and there's the burn book. And it was in that moment that I thought, what if I was in someone's notebook? Like, it's really easy for me to write these things down, but what about challenging myself to say that I've been micromanaging Mita? I've been a bad boss. And I think you can't have this conversation about how each of us could be contributing negatively to our workplaces without me talking about myself.
There's some characteristics about bad bosses. I think a number of people will, they'll tell you what characteristics they see in bad bosses, but what are like 3 or 4 that you would note to someone as, oh, you have a bad boss?
I mean, these behaviors usually I find come under any sort of pressure. People will ask me, like, when do you see bad boss behavior? It's pressure. Something number one's happening in the marketplace that's causing pressure in the business. Oh, tariffs. Number 2, your bad boss is a bad boss, right? And you're a new leader. And as in my house, we say poo poo trickles down. And then bad boss behavior, I'm absorbing it, right? And then number 3, personal earthquakes happen, something cataclysmic. Grief, miscarriage, divorce, breakup, move, someone's sick, you're sick. And that bad boss behavior shows up. I mean, there's the most common one that kills my spirit is micromanagement. The boss who yells, the boss who's incompetent, the boss who, punished me for being pregnant, the boss who spews toxic positivity. I mean, we can go on and on. There's so many. And there's different levels, right, of what we're willing to tolerate and not when it comes to bad boss behavior.
So tell us a story that you included in the book about a bad boss, and what did it teach you specifically in terms of, going forward, maybe saying like, hey, I'm never going to behave that way. Here's what I'm going to learn from. Yeah.
So this one's my mother's favorite. I talk to her every day, and my mom has all the receipts in my career. This is the story of the napper, and it is a true story of a boss who slept in his. You can't even say it without laughing, right? You're listening to it. You're like, she's making this up. No, my mom has the receipts, Jeff. I'll give you her phone number after this. The boss who fell asleep in large meetings, small meetings, it didn't matter.
Wow.
And you're like, so then there's this point when I'm working for him that I think, is he narcoleptic? Does he have substance abuse problems? Is he having a fight with his partner? Is he sleeping on the floor? Like, honestly, I'm like, what is going on with this person that he's just falling asleep all the time? And I'll never forget, we're in cubicles, but not like really high cubicles, like low cubicles in this office. And he's next to me. And he is one day just talking to a recruiter from his cubicle, taking job interview. And I find out how much he makes, and it blows my mind. And I'm like, oh, he's just disengaged. He could just give a middle finger about this job. And that to me, so it's funny, this person's napping all the time, what's going on? But Jeff, years later, I'm like, why didn't they just help him move on? And the thing that it's taught me as a leader is, Disengagement is contagious and it spreads like wildfire. And it is that famous quote we both know: your culture becomes defined by the worst behavior you're willing to tolerate. And I wish more people had the courage to check in with people when they were disengaged. I wish if I was disengaged, you had the courage, and I hope you would, and you would as leader, take me out to lunch and say, here are the things I'm seeing. What would it take for you to be happy again at work? And that's a quote from Michael Murphy at Harvard University. What would it take for you to be happy again? How can I help you recommit to this job? Because if you can't recommit to this job, you're meant to do great things, just not here. And how many of us have the courage to have that conversation? It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. Now, we're in a weird job market as you and I talk. I mean, it's
Yes.
been
Wow.
tough.
Yeah.
Tough to find a job, not many jobs available, or a lot of jobs, I should say, that are posted that might not even be
Ghost
real
jobs.
jobs. Yeah, ghost
Yes.
jobs. Are bad bosses and the fact that there is a pretty rough job market related in some type? And if so, how are they related? I'm just curious for your thoughts on
Yeah.
on this.
I mean, bad bosses can thrive in these kind of environments when there's a scarcity of jobs or a scarcity mindset. Bad bosses aren't born, they're made. I say this multiple times in the devil emails at midnight. But some industries are exceptional at making bad bosses. Beauty would be one of them, perhaps. Hollywood. Think of a hot tech brand where there's like a wonderful, charismatic, cult like leader and everyone wants to work there. And Mita, if you don't want to take this abuse, there's 10 more people waiting to take this job. WeWork is one. I used to want to work at WeWork and now we crashed, right? You see, so like,
Yeah.
so this idea that also when there are not enough jobs and people are looking in a market where, we've talked, it's like people are applying for job after job after job, being ghosted, no callbacks, going through brutal interview processes and never having closure. And so, yeah, there's this idea that the employer right now holds the power so that they can behave. Employers, by the way, made up of bad bosses, can behave this way with no recourse. But here's what happens: the pendulum always swings. And when the power is back in the hands of those who can walk with their feet or actually talk about the fact that I was burned by this company, Jeff, don't apply there. Like, this is not
Yeah.
a you want to work. And that word of mouth, as you know, as a marketer, is powerful. It is powerful word of mouth.
Why do so many bad bosses? I've noticed this, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong here in this assumption. There seems to be this interesting trend where they constantly get hired. They
Mm,
constantly can move from place to place. Why is that? Why is that the case?
yeah.
How come they sort of end up, in lots of different places before they maybe are finally discovered?
Some of these bad bosses are quite politically skilled and quite networked, and an interesting trait of some bad bosses, if they manage up really well, so the rest of the team knows what's going on, but I work for Jeff and he has no clue because I manage him so well. But also, we played lacrosse at Stanford together. We
Oh.
summer in the same town. Our families are friends. We now go on vacation together. So that personal bond is so deep that I might have just lost 5 people on my team last month, and Mita's team is a revolving door. But that personal connection is so strong that you're not willing to see what is smoke is fire, right? You're going to make excuses for me and actually even sacrifice your own brand in that, right? Because you're like, I know Mita, that's not who she is. This is all just noise.
Now, you go into detail in the book on things that bad bosses actually do. Let's talk a little bit about that. One is, the email at midnight, the
Yeah.
dreaded email at midnight. What are some other behaviors that we actually see that we should
Mm,
maybe, if we're part of a team, maybe we want to mark that. And I'm not saying
yeah.
that an email at midnight is necessarily bad. If you have a disclaimer saying, and I've had bosses like this. Hey, I'm sending this at this time. You better not respond. I'm only sending it because I'm not in the office tomorrow. I just want you to have it, but please don't reply. But like, what are some real things that we should
Yeah.
note here?
Well, I want to get into that and some other things, but here's the thing I see leaders do. They have that disclaimer, and then I write back to you at midnight, and then you respond, and then we're in a back and forth,
Uh,
right? And so
that's
this
right.
idea, right? There's a power
Yeah.
dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, if you're telling me you're only emailing at midnight because that's the best time for you, you're not in the office, you better hold to that. When I respond right away, because I want to be in your good graces. I want you to like me. I want you to promote me. I want you to, pick me, right? You're like,
That's
well,
right.
then don't respond. You're responding. You're creating this. That's the thing that happens.
That's
And
right.
to me, I want to talk about the midnight thing for a second because if it's like, as I talk about in the devil emails at midnight, it's the boss who never had time for me except at midnight. So
Mhm.
never had time for me in the office, but certainly had time to dump her inbox out at me between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. consistently, repeatedly. We are all in the business of running businesses. I'm not saying that there aren't drive periods. Certainly, I'm in a huge drive period right now for my book, but that doesn't mean that this is sustainable,
Yeah.
that I can continue to burn myself out like this or burn my team. That's the difference.
Now, there are 4 generations in the workplace at the moment. If we had to, generically define it. You have
Sure.
boomers, you have Gen X, you have millennials, you have Gen Z that are all working together. There's been a discussion that bad bosses have a tendency of being fear driven, and that is usually people who are boomers and Gen X, and then you have empathetic leaders that
Huh.
are millennial and Gen Z. Now, tell me if I'm just blowing smoke by saying that, but also, how do we really get to more empathetic leadership? Because I think that bad bosses usually are fear
Sure.
based.
Yeah, they
So,
are. They are.
how do we get people to
I mean,
actually,
listen, I think this is when we talk about any community, it's hard to stereotype. And
yep,
so you have to get to know people and how they lead. It's very easy for someone to do research and draw trends. I've been guilty of that versus saying, hey, let me not label this person and get to know them and their leadership style. We have to stop thinking that empathy and kindness cousins of each other, that it's a weakness. It's the
yeah,
greatest strength. It's a retention tool. If you treat me well, I'm going to stay. Someone comes to offer me 10,000 or 20,000 more, I'm not leaving, maybe for 100,000. But it's like what's that cost to be respected and valued? I mean, that's what it's about. I come to work for a paycheck. Some of us have found our purpose. We've lost the plot when it comes to inclusion. It is about feeling that you're seen, recognized, your voice matters, your value matters, that you know that you're making impact at work. That's what it's about. And so if people could really think that empathetic leadership is really a tool for retention, that's what it is. It doesn't mean that you can't be firm or hold people accountable or drive results. It just means that you take a moment to think about your team's perspective, put yourself in someone else's shoes, and think about how you can behave in a more kind, graceful manner and still drive results.
now, we go with the team concept at work. You have a
Yeah.
team, you manage a team, but then when you look at the team, you're individually reviewing them. Is there a need for finally getting to a place where we look at, hey, how is the team going to actually perform? And I'm going to review the team, and you're going to get rewards or promotions as a result of the team and not the individual diatribes that we've seen in corporate America. And is
Yeah.
that change a hard one to make because we don't like collectivism in the United
I
States?
mean, listen, this is what the biggest change I would make is a leader is in charge of making more leaders. That's their number one job. So if I'm
Yep.
leading a team, it's very easy for me to write up a very wonderful self-evaluation performance review to submit to Jeff, the CMO, versus, hey, no, I'm going to show all the things my team did, the good, bad, and ugly. And guess what? I should be responsible for attrition and I should be held responsible for promotion rates, right? And that's a hard one. People don't want to take that accountability for all sorts of reasons because it's not that's because I can excuse it. I can have a story for every person who's left or every person who didn't get promoted. And if I'm managing up well enough, you're going to believe that story versus looking at the data.
Leader polls. So you have like the one time a year. So
Oh,
think about
yeah.
this. I'm curious about this. You have a leader who reviews their team maybe up to 4 times a year or at least once a year, but they're probably having regular check ins. But then the team can only review the leader 1 time a year in pretty
Yeah.
much what is called an anonymous survey. Like, what's wrong with that? Is that actually entrenching a lot of this this
It
bad
is.
boss behavior?
Wouldn't it be amazing? I mean, I can rate my Uber driver. Why shouldn't I be able to rate my boss? Isn't that powerful? That's scary. Isn't that uncomfortable? Ooh, because then the power dynamics shift. All of a sudden, I'm just not managing up to Jeff and that rating he's going to give me. My team has a say in that rating. And then it starts to matter how I treat my team,
That's
right?
right.
And so that's what you're trying to measure. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that. And then it becomes performative. It's once a year, it's anonymous, it's confidential, but not anonymous. It's anonymous, but not, all those sort of disclaimers. And you're like, why can't we just get into the regular practice of giving each other feedback?
Toxicity. The term is thrown around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Why do we see so much of it in work cultures? Is it group dynamics? Is it groupthink? What causes it? How do we prevent it? How do we make sure that we actually have a true place where people can be
Mm.
themselves?
I think any word can be overused and weaponized and go to extremes. But, toxicity is a sign of bad behavior. And at the end of the day, people aren't treating each other well. If I'm trying to describe it to my 10-year-old, what does that mean? It's like you're hurting each other. You're not being very nice. You're not treating each other well. And so what are all the outcomes of that? And I think that's, I wish more of us were talking about that. I think to your point earlier, when there's a scarcity mindset of any kind, when there's stress in the marketplace on an individual in a company, that's when you start to see the toxicity come out because people might be in survival mode. And here's the interesting thing. I've never done anything in my career that was life or death. Haven't been a crisis counselor, 911 operator, ER medical professional. I've just sold lots of products and SaaS software. Like none of this was life or death. There are people listening who are in jobs that are life and death, and thank you for the work you do. That's also really interesting. It's like we're in survival mode for what reason? To drive
Yeah.
revenue. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the one big takeaway if listeners and viewers of the show, what's the one big takeaway that you hope gets people to go out, buy, and read this book?
Yeah. It's really easy to nickname your bad boss a Disney villain or a Marvel character. I have done that and continue to do that. It's harder to look in the mirror and say, I've been a bad boss, and chances are so have you. That, like each of us, imagine if you sat down and you thought, what's the one behavior I want to change tomorrow? Like, I want to show up to work more positively and tell someone else I'm working on it and have someone hold me accountable. Imagine if all of us showed up to work tomorrow doing that. What a better workplace culture we would be. And so that's what I want to think about. Imagine if you didn't know you were doing one thing to hold someone back at work or to stop them from actually doing great work. Wouldn't you want to change that? And I think most of us would say, yes, we would.
Mita Malik, The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. The book is out now. Make sure you go out and pick up a copy. Oh, Mita, audiobook. I love audiobooks. Did you read the book? Is there going to be an
I
audio
did. It
version?
also comes out on September 30th when the hard copy comes out, and it is me narrating it. And it was quite therapeutic, I'll tell you, Jeff.
I
Quite
love it.
therapeutic.
I'm
Yeah.
going to definitely go and listen to that. I think
Thank
it's
you.
awesome. Mita, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Posted Careers Podcast, conversations at the intersection of careers and the future of work. Posted Careers. Don't get hooked. Get hired. Stop endlessly scrolling. Start quickly finding. Check out fresh jobs. Serve daily at Posted.Careers.